All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to break down the philosophy of Luciferianism. But, and this is a big but, we're doing it through a very specific lens. We are sticking entirely to the book Apotheosis, The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Luciferianism by Michael W. Ford. So our goal here is just to explain the concepts as they're laid out in this one particular text, plain and simple.
So that brings us to the big question, right? It's a topic that's surrounded by a ton of confusion, a lot of preconceived ideas. So, according to this book, what is Luciferianism, really?
Well, right off the bat, the book draws a very clear line in the sand. It pushes aside that common misconception of devil worship. Instead, it says Luciferianism is a philosophy all about self-deification. And what that means is the process of becoming your own God, right here, in this life. It's basically a framework for personal power and taking total responsibility for yourself.
Now, to really get your head around this philosophy, the book starts with a fundamental concept, this idea that there are two totally different ways to approach things. It calls them the right-hand path and the left-hand path.
Okay, first up, you've got the right-hand path, or RHP. The book basically describes this as the path of most mainstream religions. It's all about surrendering your individual self, wanting to merge with some kind of higher power, or, just following a preset plan laid out by a creator god.
And then, in total contrast, you have the left-hand path, or LHP. This is, well, it's the exact opposite. It's described as a conscious choice to hold on to and even strengthen your unique individual consciousness. The focus here is all on self-determination, on individualism, and awakening your own potential, not merging with something else.
I think this slide really nails the difference with a great analogy. The book frames the RHP as submitting to a preordained story. It's like you're just following a map that somebody else already drew for you. The LHP, on the other hand, is about forging your own road. It's about you being the one who actually draws the map.
Okay, so if the left-hand path is all about drawing your own map, that kind of begs the question, how? How do you actually do that? Well, the book lays out a set of core principles it calls the 11 Luciferian points of power, and these are the absolute foundation of the philosophy.
And here's the thing, these aren't just some abstract philosophical ideas. The book presents them as a real, practical toolkit. Think of them like keys you can use in your daily life to unlock a new way of thinking, one that's all about being your own authority and shaking off old beliefs that hold you back.
Now, to really get a feel for this, we're not going to list all 11. Instead, let's just zoom in on 3 that I think really capture the whole vibe of the philosophy. And we're going to start with point 4, which completely flips the script on the idea of the adversary.
You see? This perfectly illustrates that central theme. The adversary here isn't some evil dude with horns. No, it's an internal symbol. It's that spark inside you that questions things, that challenges dogma. It stands for a path of radical self-responsibility, where the only person you answer to is yourself.
All right, next up is point 8. And this one is huge because it goes right at that core concept we talked about, self-deification. It explains what becoming your own God actually looks like in practice.
So the key idea here is self-governance. It's about taking total command of your life, your thoughts, your actions, where you're headed, and living with this kind of purpose and strength, almost as if your consciousness itself is this powerful, enduring thing. It's all about building a strong mind.
And let's look at one last one, point 11. This one kind of ties everything together. It's like the capstone, bringing all those other ideas into one final, powerful statement about what's possible.
And there it is. This is the ultimate goal according to the book. It's that moment of full realization that you are the creative force in your own life. You don't just follow a path, you actually create it, you sustain it, and you light it up with your own potential.
Okay, so we've got the core principles down, but how does a person actually walk this path? Well, the book lays out a practical 3-stage journey for personal growth called the Triad of the Morning Star.
This whole journey is framed as this ongoing cycle of 3 key phases. You've got liberation, which then leads to illumination, which finally culminates in apotheosis. So let's quickly break down what each of those actually means.
First up is liberation. The book describes this as the act of hunting down and breaking free from any beliefs or mental habits that are holding you back. It's all about shattering those mental chains, like religious guilt or having a victim mentality, so you can finally take full accountability for your own life.
So once you're liberated, the next stage is illumination. This is where you actively go out and seek knowledge, wisdom, insight. And it's not just about learning for learning's sake.
It's about applying that knowledge to strategically hit your goals and shape the world the way you want it.
And these first two stages, they lead to apotheosis. Now here's the catch. This isn't some finish line you cross. The book is very clear that it's a continual state of being. It's this ongoing process of mastering yourself, where you're constantly achieving your goals, and as a result, gaining more personal power and wisdom.
So, with that philosophy and that journey in mind, what kind of person does the book actually describe as a Luciferian? Well, the text paints a pretty clear picture, outlining a few key personality traits.
The book basically paints a portrait of a maverick, someone who's always questioning the status quo. They're an achiever, driven by this inner fire to just get things done. This person is fiercely accountable and independent, taking full ownership of their wins and their losses. They're also self-reliant and intellectual. But what I find really interesting is the last point, tolerant. They respect other viewpoints because their own beliefs aren't built on rigid dogma.
And all of this brings us full circle, right back to the central, most defining idea of this entire philosophy as it's laid out in the book, this ultimate goal of apotheosis.
So, let's put a final pin in this. Apotheosis, in this context, is this lifelong journey of self-transformation. It's about becoming your own God, not in some literal, supernatural way, but in a very practical, philosophical one. It's about recognizing that you and you alone are the creator, the governor, and the ultimate authority in your own life.
And we'll end with the central challenge that this book really puts forward. It asks the reader to fully embrace this idea of being the one and only creator and governing force of their own life. And, whether you agree with the philosophy or not, it is a really powerful question to think about. What does that level of absolute self-responsibility truly mean to you?